Years ago, I was in a Bible study that now a buddy of mine was teaching, but he wasn't a buddy of mine at the time. And he began to tell a story of how he asked his wife to marry him. And so this was his story. He picked up his girlfriend in his car, and they drove out to a lake. And when they got to the lake, there was like a ski boat waiting for them. And they got in the ski boat and they jetted all around the lake. And then they went to this little island in the lake. And there was a little picnic set up for them. And so then they sat at this picnic and they, kind of ate a little snack and drank a little drink. I don't know if it was drank. All right, I'm just saying they had a little something to drink. I don't know what it was. Not my story. All right, and hung out, and then they got back in the boat and went towards the shore. When they got back to the shore, his car was gone, and there was a limousine there. So now at that moment, bells are going off in her head, all right? At that moment now, girlfriend knows, this is different. And they get in the limousine and they drive it out to an airfield. And they, at the airfield, get in this little airplane and they take off in this airplane. And I don't remember where he said it was. It was like Arkansas or Missouri or someplace like this. And they land the airplane in this little grass strip, all right? Just a little death trap puddle jumper, okay? And it lands and they get out of the airplane and there is this beat up ghetto jalopy truck waiting on them there, and get into this little ghetto thing, and then they drive into this little college area that has a chapel, and they walk into the chapel and it's set up for a wedding. So the candelabras are lit, there's flowers at the end, there's rose petals on the way up, and there's a giant card with her name on it. And she, he's like, go ahead. She walks forward. He just follows behind. She opens up the card. Will you? Bam! He's on his knee with the ring. All right. She says yes. And then they go out to dinner and he begins to unpack that each vehicle was symbolic of a stage of their journey. Right? I mean, at that point, I'm like, you have sowed into the life of every girl in this room disappointment. You have literally just ruined every young collegiate woman's experience in one sermon illustration. Every girl in this room will now respond, really? Sure. When her turn comes. So he sits across dinner with his now fiance and says, my car at the beginning stood for just the normalcy of life. And here's what you can expect of me on normal days. I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to do this. I am going to fall short. But here's my goal and here's my desire. And here's what I want to promise to you in our normal days. And the boat is for times that are fun and there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of joy and everything's going our way. And here's what you can expect of me. And here's my promise to you in those days. And the limo is when other people have to drive us, when circumstances, sorrows, loss, when other people are driving the direction of our lives. Here's what you can expect of me, and here's what I promise to you. And the airplane ride, that's symbolic of our growing spiritually with one another, right? I'm just like, who is this guy, right? And that's why I was like, I got to be friends with this dude, right? I mean, I'm so dumb. I'm just like, you want to see a movie? I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need a brother to disciple me, all right? And so he says that the airplane ride was their spiritual journey, and here's what you can expect, and here's what, right? And then the beat up old jalopy, right? The ghetto little hoopty truck. That's what? Growing old together. And here's what you could, seriously. Listen, men, just look at your girl right now and say, sorry. Just do it. Just apologize. You didn't know? You didn't just apologize. I'm sorry, boo. I'm sorry. All right. I didn't know. So now, the old beat up truck was, and here's what you can expect of me, and here's what my hopes are. Here's what I promise you as we grow old together. And listen, if you're single, let me help you, young men. When you ask your girl to marry you, she's going to get asked 2 questions 7 billion times before the wedding. Let me see the ring. How do you do it? So don't put the ring on your toe and be like, will you rub my feet? Oh, what's up? Don't do that, all right? You're going to make her tell that story and everyone's going to think you're an idiot. All right? God, look at eye contact, young single guys. God has given you Google. Use it. All right, use it. Now, 2 things. What do you think? What do you think her heart level is on a scale of 1 to 10 coming out and getting to tell that story? I mean, what do you think her anticipation is? What do you think her excitement is? I mean, you think she thinks she's got a keeper? I mean, that's lights out, man. I mean, I don't know, outside of a YouTube clip I saw recently, I don't know anybody that could top that mug. I mean, that's unreal. You don't think she's ecstatic at what's just been promised her? I mean, you know the amount of effort it would take to pull that off? Like, where do you get a plane? How do you even go about doing that? I mean, I'm just trying to think, who do I know with an airplane that would, and really his story was when people found out what he was doing, they didn't even charge him. So he's checking out the airplane. Well, what do you want to do? Well, here's what I'm doing. Well, if you'll pay for the gas, we'll fly you. Right? I mean, how do you, I mean, this guy, I mean, that's a lot of change in the bank. You'd think that'd float for like 20 years. Why don't you clean the kitchen? Because I got you a plane. That's why. Because we had fun on the boat, girl. Right? I mean, so you've got this promises that are being made. But here would be my point. That's a pretty good starting point, right? But let me ask a question. With that as the starting point, an unbelievable rollout of grand promises. If he does not fulfill or even attempt to fulfill any of those promises, doesn't the grandeur turn into a level of bitterness that would be hard to communicate? If you're going to go that over the top with the promise, if you're going to do that much work in the promise, if you don't strive to deliver some of that promise, doesn't that create in the human heart a level of bitterness that would overshadow the excitement when the promise is delivered? And here's what I would tell you, brothers and sisters in Christ. God has lavishly promised us impossible things. Because here's what I know about my boys' will you marry me event. He doesn't know what it's like to be married yet. He doesn't know what joys and sorrows are coming his way. He don't know what the Beetle truck's going to look like. I mean, does your sight fail you? Does your body does your mind go away? You see, he's making a promise, has no idea what he knows the truck's going to be busted up, but he doesn't know how busted up. He's talking about spiritual ascent, but you know how spiritual ascent occurs? With lift and thrust. It occurs violently. He's making that promise not knowing how much fun time there'll be versus how much limo time there'll be. And yet our God makes epic promises aware of, look right at me, every joy and every sorrow you'll ever experience. Look at me, every one of them. He knew them all before he ever made the promises that we're about to read. And the reason that you and I, as believers in Jesus Christ, should be men and women free of bitterness and resentment is because our God not only made grand promises, but he fulfilled them. And in how he has fulfilled them, we should be all the more confident that he'll fulfill them all in their fullness at the consummation of all things. And so with that said, let's